It's an RFQ, and they're not really. They're just misrepresenting their services. That's all it is. That's pretty good to go. It made sense.
So the question is,
most people are.
if we selected on the floor, that's not school. If we selected it on the floor, that doesn't mean that kind of work. But we just have
He loves it. But people that schedule
So your timeline gives it up
Really?
January.
Yeah.
And that is just to reiterate the 12th. I have it all.
So we're going to go over the format You guys, we're going to call the meeting to order here so we can get it rolling. So, a quick review of the timeline is going to be the first. You guys settle in?
We're going to move the field conversation first.
Right. We're gonna move that.
We're going to move it right up.
Okay. So the first item on the agenda, we're going to switch some things around because we have some busy people on the field conversation. We're going to start it off. That's going to be our first item on the agenda, and looking for you guys to start off the conversation on and review our field needs and concerns and all that good stuff.
So let me start with some introductions. Scott Little from the rec department, Scott Hazelton from the highway department, Jack Acapino, science teacher, soccer coach, was also on the field committee that was established, and they'll talk about that. Tom Frederick, our athletic director, also on the field committee, Miles Cooney, soccer coach, guidance counselor, also on the field committee. What I'll do is to start, and Tom put this together last year, there's just a usage form regarding our fields and our gyms, and just so people have a little bit of information in front of them. And so what I'd like to start, if you guys can maybe fill us in with what was done in the past on that fields committee and kind of bring us forward to today. And then we can talk a little bit more with the town about things that are going on there.
About the past, what we did.
Try to go loud because some of you have backs to
We stand up?
Sure. Go as you're comfortable with, but make sure the volume's up.
Yeah, thank you. Good. Miles is going to talk about what we did for the last field committee meetings that we had years ago, where we tried to put forth a field plan for our schools.
Yeah, where that started was our numbers and our co-curricular involvement was up. The field usage was up, and we were trying to figure out what to do about it. The amount of foot traffic on the fields deteriorates the resource that we have, and we were concerned and kind of projecting going forward that we're going to continue to have big numbers in our athletic programs and field programs. At that point, we were looking at adding a track and field program. And so we put together a committee that looked at the resources we have, the campus we have, and how we do things. We had a consultant from a, welcome, we had a consultant from a synthetic turf company explain to us what the benefits of a turf field might be. At that point, one of the things that was brought forward was you could make a multi-purpose field out here that could be used for all sports. They also looked at developing the land behind here, behind the SAU, between the baseball field and here, and what it would cost to excavate and create practice fields back there. Because one of the issues we have is not only space, You know, the existing field here is a multi-purpose field. The softball field goes into the soccer field. So the dedicated space, but then also the foot traffic and giving fields a rest. So they were looking at creating a resource back here where they could move the softball fields and maybe create a practice venue. I think the excavation cost of that alone was $400,000. The conversation over the course of probably under 10, but over 5 meetings, led the committee to, and they had renderings, they had people come and survey the land and make sure that we were looking at the accurate space. And it was a recommendation of the committee that they look at a turf resource for a number of reasons. They presented that to the school board, and at that time it was a project they didn't want to go forward. So
They also talked about regular grass at that point.
yeah, oh yeah, no, they looked at the
And
camp.
this man-
That's right. But the field committee moved forward. You know, I don't know what you moved forward with today, but at that point they moved forward recommending that we look at a turf field to meet the needs of all the teams here. At that point, we go forward with it. So,
That's correct.
yeah.
Do you know who the company was that you guys consulted with for the turf?
Product was field, but I don't know if that was.
How many years ago was that? 8 years ago. Oh.
So I think it was my first year here, they actually came in and did a presentation, I remember at a board meeting, so we probably can go back and find out if they actually came in and gave us a whole rundown about what it looked like and cost and product.
And that was the multi-purpose field was gonna be where the soccer field is now.
Yes.
And you were gonna
Talking about
redo the
building-
top.
Well, we're looking about building a practice/softball field somewhere over there on the side, so we could.
Down
Whole
below
new-
the
whole
field.
new field,
Yeah,
yeah.
towards the SAU building.
Yes,
Right. And there was enough property in there to make that all happen?
that was the thought.
Okay.
Yeah, for a softball size
Right,
field
smaller field.
with using the outfield to practice a soccer, middle school soccer in the fall.
Was it ever thrown around to do turf up on the top field?
No.
No.
You know, and one of the things that a turf field gave you, and I'm not advocating for a turf field now, I'm saying the reason they went forward with that, there were a number of reasons. First of all, was the excavation cost in the back, but also the turf field there gave you the ability to put a softball field on the soccer field without creating usage issues or damage to the fields. It also allowed you to create track resources. At that time, they're looking at running lanes on either side of what is the existing soccer field, so the kids could run hurdles. They had hit events that they were going to place in here. So those were the ideas that they were banding around at that time. So the track was its infancy stages then, and you know, today we still are finding a place for the track teams.
How many kids do we have that do track now? About?
Well, between the middle and high school, the number's probably around 40, John?
50.
50, okay.
Where do we practice now?
Well, currently our track practices down at the Sherburne in the early spring in the gym, and then running up the hill and sending kids out on the road.
So they don't practice on the field?
They don't practice on any of the fields because there's no real room at the time. And they'll go to Newport High School, which we've been able to share their facility. They've been great about it. And, we have a great relation with Newport, so.
Thank you.
I guess what I'm here to talk about is some of the programming that we offer at the school and the numbers that we have. We place a big value on our co-curricular activities. We think it's important that students are involved in some manner with the school, and our numbers have continued to increase over the years. Currently this year we'll have about 110 kids playing soccer, grades 6 through 12. And the spaces that we have one field out there that's currently unable to be used because we're trying to repair it. But even if it was repaired, the drainage situation that's out there currently wouldn't allow us to play on a day like today. We have 4 teams vying for spots up on the baseball field, and people who know the history of the baseball field know that that field, when it rains, becomes totally useless. So we often send excess kids down to Veterans Field, one of our middle school teams, and there's a time limitation on that, which is understandable because below grade 6, the rec department uses Vets Field, so there is a time crunch and constraint with that. Last year in the last 4 years, we've lost 4 tournament games. So one of the things that our kids and coaches pride themselves
Not on the scoreboard.
Right, not on the scoreboard, but the fields. One of the things we pride ourselves is to try and get home games because we have great community support. People love to watch the teams here. And unfortunately, over the last 4 years, we haven't been able to host those games because our field's been virtually unplayable. So we've had to go to Proctor, we've had to go to Colby Sawyer, we've had to go to and Newport, and we've had to go to the New England College to play tournament games. While not awful, but not ideal. We seem to find a way to make it work. For baseball and softball last year, we had about 60 baseball kids and almost 40 softball kids. Now we have one regulation-sized baseball field that's supposed to fit the needs for four teams. And we'll practice down at Dewey, but it's not a regulation field for the age-appropriate levels that we offer. And while, again, we make it work, we can't play any games down there. Our home fields this year, I can tell you we had 4 practices on all year. Now granted, it was a tough spring for everyone, but Newport High School was playing on their field, Claremont High School was playing on their field, most other schools in the area were playing on their fields. We had 4 practices, and the rest of the time we were either in the gym or we had to go to pay Colby Sawyer to practice on their field, and we played only 3 home games here. Same thing with the varsity girls softball team, I think they only had 4 practices on their field as well. So we're servicing a lot of kids in our school. We take a lot of pride in the fact that we have these numbers. There are not many schools in Division IV that have a committed JV program. I think that we're one of 6 schools that continuously is able to field a JV team and middle school teams, and sometimes 2 middle school teams for each sport, because of the value that the kids and the parents have on the programs, and they realize how important it is for them. In Division III, there are schools that are much bigger than ours, 2 and 3 times the size of us, that cannot even put together a JV team. So I'll end up calling Claremont, and they'll say, we don't have enough boys for our JV team this year to play on the same day as varsity. So again, that's a source of pride for not only the coaches in the athletic department, but I think for the whole student body as well, and I think really for a lot of the community. And so unfortunately, with all this great problem we have with student participation, the amount of traffic that goes on in the fields, it wears them down. Coaches also offer summer programs, so it doesn't give the fields time to rest. But I think it says something that when you have 38 kids wanting to play summer baseball, 40 kids playing summer soccer, coaches donating their time, lining the fields, raking the fields, doing whatever they need to do to get a field space for these kids because they think it's important. Not just to win a soccer game or a baseball game, but to give these kids an activity to do, to learn teamwork, cooperation, dedication, all of these things that we value in our athletic department. We're giving these kids year-round opportunities. And unfortunately, a lot of times these opportunities are squelched because we don't have a field space or a place to put them. On the scheduling side of things, there are days where we'll have 2 games going on up here back to back and 2 games going on for the varsity for soccer, and there's no practice place for our middle school kids. You'll watch middle school girls kicking soccer balls at the backstop to make the league nets. We'll also have baseball games where we can't have a practice for the varsity level because there's a middle school game or a JV game, so we try and make something work. So in terms of programming, it's not ideal, but again, I think through the dedication and flexibility of the coaches, we try and make things work. But certainly, I think we'd be in a better spot with better fields, better conditions, and some more opportunities for the kids to practice and play to get better at their crafts.
These issues are current and ongoing. The soccer season ended last year. The last 2 weeks, the teams were not on the fields here. We opened this season. We have 1 1/4 field for 100, well, the middle school kids have 40 kids, so around 90 kids. So we're making it work, we're figuring it out, we're doing a lot of fitness, but that's where we're at. We ended the season last year without a resource, and we're starting with not enough resource this year.
I'd just add, I've been coaching for, I think this is going to be my 24th year. When I first started, it was the first year that the girls had a soccer team. When I first started coaching, that field out there was probably one of the nicest fields in Division IV. It was beautiful. I mean, granted, it didn't get the traffic, right? I mean, there was only a boys, before that, there was only a boys varsity, JV, and probably middle school team. Now we have twice, or maybe even 3 times, that amount of teams playing on those 2 fields now. So it's like the traffic has made it troublesome more than anything. It's not that we don't keep them up. Our grounds crew does a great job trying to get us, you know, into all these games, even these games that we've missed in the last few years. It's just that there's so much traffic on it. It's tough.
Sam, let you guys back at the table, and you guys consider it here. Can you just give us a quick overview, Scott, of sort of what you're experiencing from a town point of view regarding fields, and how you rely on our fields as well, I think?
Sure. I've been recreation director for 15 years, and more than 12 of those 15, we've studied the fields in town, which include Veterans Field and Dewey Field, both sides of Route 11. We've had the need always. Probably 12 years ago or more, we started utilizing Dewey baseball field as a practice field for 3rd and 4th grade, because 5th and 6th grade took up Veterans Field as well as some of the practices from the middle school, and that's just in the fall season. We have about 100 kids, grades kindergarten through 6th grade. Some of the 6th graders play rec or middle school or both. And then when we get into the spring season, the situation's even worse. It's one of the most popular seasons for participation. You know, we exceed 125 kids. Again, T-ball through Major League Baseball. And then we have summer Babe Ruth that utilizes the varsity field here. So over the years, we've worked with engineers and we've studied what we can do. Veterans Field started out as being a swamp in the center of town. That was what it was, and it's built over the years. Dewey Field was created when they split Route 11, and that's the fill from the split. So it was created for probably not much money, and that's the history of it. We've done test pits up at Dewey Baseball Field. The water table is very high, so we can't, you know, dig down and expand. Plus, we have the deed to work with, so any old growth needs to remain old growth. So we can't clear and make more fields up there. On the other side of the road, the Seven Hearts side or Mount Royal side, there's more opportunity because it was open field 100 years ago, so it could become more fields. But there's quite a dip. So to make retaining walls to have a flat surface is feasible, possible. It's just pricey.
Too expensive.
How much land do we have on the Seven Hearts side?
Well, the whole thing I think was 100 acres. So I think
Dewey's got about 70 on that side, right?
yeah. So I'd have to find out exactly. It's been a number of years. You know, we kind of narrowed our focus as Veterans Field would be the best location because of its accessibility and visibility for a number of different things. So we've kind of put anything on Dewey on the back burner to focus on Veterans Field. We rely on the high school fields heavily, especially in the spring. We do T-ball here every Saturday morning, and this is where we play the softball games because we have a lot of baseball teams that utilize Dewey Field and Veterans Field. So it's a big need. The relationship between town and school has always been wonderful.
Can you stand up over
Just
here?
stand, do you mind?
Get around it?
You guys maybe like stand up and speak towards us? Just
Or even just stand where you are and project out.
Sure.
Please.
sorry, we just can't hear anything.
Where did you stop hearing me?
I'm Scott.
I'm Scott.
The relationship between town and school has always been wonderful, whether we're talking about outdoor facilities or gym facilities. So the need is great. Just to repeat again, we have over 100 kids participating in soccer, K through 2. Basketball is a little bit smaller because there's a lot of kids that ski and do other activities. And then in the spring, we get over 125 kids. We've always consistently had those numbers. We provide for both gender teams and grade teams, so we fill every team. So there's needs. A little bit of history of Veterans Field. It started out as being a swamp. Dewey Field started out as being the fill from when they made Route 11. So we studied both of those fields, how we can make more. Probably the most feasible spot as far as town land would be on the Seven Hearts side of Route 11 as one possible location. Not to say that it's wonderful, because it would be pricey, but it's another place. Hopefully a lot of you are familiar with our plans for Veterans Field. We've fixed drainage over the years. That was probably most of 10 years ago that we did some ditching around the perimeter to help with drainage. And then when the town was test driving a grader, we did some grader work to make it flatter, so things are better, but we've really never put a lot of money into it. That's why we're going forward with our plan for now, but seeing how this whole process goes.
Scott, did that school, Seven House, Mount Royal Academy, Ruin Mill, but are they willing to pitch in to help develop more fields over there?
I'm gonna cut that off because we gotta get our meeting done, okay?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. There'll be time for comments at the end of the school board meeting, right? We're gonna have comments
Public forums.
at the public forum.
Yeah.
We're not gonna do a public forum. Everybody get that one? Okay. No?
No.
We have
Public-
the-
Public forum's gonna be at the end of the school board meeting, okay? Because we've got a back-to-back meeting tonight, so we're trying to get through all of our agenda items.
Scott, can you talk a little bit from the highway department? Because as Scott was saying, there are some plans sort of starting to look at Veterans Field, potentially, and you and I have talked about some of the issues regarding Route 11, drainage, that field, and what all that looks like. And then maybe if you could throw in there any other, if you know of any pieces of property that might be available within the community, in your sort of out taking a look.
So, my name's Scott Hazelton, I'm the highway director, and I've been working with Scott Blewett for a couple of years now on the Veterans Field kind of reconstruction project. And one of the things that we've identified with that field, there still remains a drainage issue. There's a large drainage pipe that goes underneath the field that's in very tough shape. It consists of a lot of different pipe types, right down to granite blocks that were put in probably in the early 1800s that drain all the way across the field, down in front of both banks and Sherburne Gym, and then discharge into the river. One of the things that we've also been working on for my department with the planning department is some improvements to Route 11, which incorporate some of the drainage from the field and include drainage improvements on Route 11, because there's really no stormwater treatment on Route 11 before it discharges into the river. So those two projects have been kind of simultaneously planned. The Route 11 project is not moving forward at this time. It's in the planning department's hands and in the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission's hands to assist the town with. However, as Scott said, the Veterans Field Plan moved forward until this process started, and while this process is vetted out, we're still going to continue to look at those drainage issues underneath the field, so that whether one or the other moves forward, we've still got to address that drainage issue under the field and improve the stormwater discharge into the river. That's it relative to the plans that I've been working on for Route 11 and for Veterans Field. And you know, I'm aware that Dewey Field can't be expanded, and that there's land across the street that is steep, and so and I'm not sure that it would be really economically feasible to create a playing field on a slope that's roughly 5 to 8%. So there'd have to be some more studies done there, and I'm not sure what type of facility it would support either. Beyond that, I don't think that the town that I'm aware of from the highway department standpoint or the transfer station standpoint has suitable land for a large playing facility such as the one that was discussed earlier.
Thank you. Scott, you mentioned that there's deed restrictions on the Dewey Field where there can't have any old growth cotton.
Right.
Okay, so that's
Yeah, that's set forth by the Dewey family, and it's overseen by Conservation Commission and the Society of Protective Forest.
Gotcha. Thank you. Anybody got any questions?
No, that was really helpful.
Just a quick question, Brad, you sent out in July sort of the Optimum soccer field, and they had the dimension 75 by 120 yards. Would an optimal soccer, like a high school level soccer field, fit on Veterans Field? So that we're talking 75 yards, so you're really talking
75 by what, 120?
120.
That would be the field white mark.
That's just the field
Yeah,
itself.
so you'd have to go probably at least
Yeah,
10
we had,
yards.
let's see, for the soccer field with parking and a 100-meter running track, it was about, I don't know in yards, it's 535 feet by 345.
345.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was just kind of a footprint.
It's, I mean, you're talking just under 200 yards at that point, and so I think what we discussed was, the new playing field that he's proposing is, I forget the regulation size.
Middle school size.
Middle school
Okay.
size. And even eliminating the skate park and the basketball courts and the parking that were, the improvements that you still wouldn't have that.
Don't have the room.
That room,
Okay.
No, not without going into the bank.
to the bank.
The hillside.
I think that's as important,
Right.
looking at our need and looking at what's
I
there.
think if you were to take the town's GIS orthophoto, print that and try to plunk fields on it and play with shapes, that's how we've developed, the engineers developed that field moving forward, is playing with what fits there without significant impacts to the embankments.
I understood we're looking for 6 acres for what we think,
That was including the, I think, the softball field.
Yeah, that was it didn't include bleachers,
Right.
so, and it was 50 parking spaces, so not a lot of parking.
Yeah.
What do we have behind the SAU?
In acreage,
It's a lot, but it's on a hill.
Steep,
I mean,
yeah.
it climbs quickly.
Yeah. I'm just thinking it could be creative with, could be a couple different layers of, if there's a running track, could be a different elevation than a soccer field.
Different tier.
You could
Yeah, we
terrace
could
it.
tear it up, you
Terrace
know?
it.
Yeah,
That's all I'm thinking. Get creative with what we have.
it's a lot of terracing. Is there anything else in town that's available? I mean,
These guys would know. These are the ones they ask.
There was a piece of land that was owned by Bruce Jennings that I think later was bought by Conservation Commission, right down the road,
Mhm.
like across the street. There was a chunk that Bruce had mentioned about giving to the town or rec department for this type of athletic. It really never got a lot of traction. I think he was just throwing ideas around.
Mhm.
So maybe Van Webb or Conservation would be a good one to ask
Okay.
about that.
Yeah.
What was the name of the first owner?
Bruce
Bruce
Jennings.
Jennings.
Yeah.
There's also probably some pretty good space available at the top of Route 11. That's still owned, but could have potential.
Where's that now?
Abbott Land.
Behind Mount Royal.
Yep.
But they're not overwhelmed with fields either, so.
Mount Royal reached out to me. They are looking for field space, so that I think they're gonna try to arrange to use Dewey before 4 o'clock, because they do theirs right after school. They might have a couple teams. They're sending their teams over to Newberry, Fisher Fields,
Mm.
so they have a need for space as well.
I can tell you in a conversation I had with their headmaster, Derek Tremblay, in July, and I mentioned we were looking at field, and he said if there was an opportunity, if we could find something, and collaboratively 3 entities go in, they'd be more than willing to have a conversation.
It's encouraging.
So a little piece of history, Mount Royal was very interested in developing the land, the Dewey land on their side of Route
Mhm.
11. They were very interested in having some of their donors develop it.
Yeah.
And then they totally kind of switched, and they realized they didn't want to make that much of a financial commitment without owning the land. And they always said, you know, you could use it as much as you want. But at that point, it changed. You know, when somebody gives a piece of land to the town out of respect, you don't really put it up for sale.
Right.
Once it's gone, it's gone. So that's where the discussions kind of fizzled out, is when they wanted to buy it. So before that, there were healthy discussions about them helping to develop it, but the town always remained the owners.
Well, it sounds like your discussion with them they might have changed their ideas a little bit just because of their lack of
That's it.
field space,
Right.
you know, so I
As
think
said,
they're opening back
sure,
up.
they said they're going to Newberry or somewhere to.
They go to Fisher Field and Newberry.
Yeah, so they're traveling, they might have something a little close to home.
Right.
So I think one of the questions, and why I brought everyone to the table tonight, is it worth us researching or forming sort of a subcommittee to look at fields? I mean, this committee's got a lot of work to do anyhow, but it's almost, you have some people who've done it before, we got some town people. Would that be something that this committee would like to talk about or?
Yeah,
Hold that for one
facilitate?
sec. What
So
do you
I
want
was
to
just
add?
talking to Scott about one other piece that is in front of Mount Royal Academy that's owned by the town that the old Route 11 passes through.
Yep.
That's flat. and that, you know, I know that, Mount Royal was looking at parking.
Parking garages,
out there,
right.
Parking, so, but that may be another spot that is flat and maybe developable, just,
Yeah.
Is that what the, like, gravel pull-off is?
No, it's when you go to
no,
Hart
when
Lane.
you go to
there's
Seven
a
Hearts
lot of
Lane,
lots.
it's on the right. It's on the right, yeah, it's across from that field, the old Route 11 goes through it,
Right.
and it's
Oh,
flat.
Yeah.
It's flat.
Yeah.
That's right. The snowmobile trails there.
Yep.
There's also the land at the 10311 split that has maybe 10 acres or so, where the old mill was, yeah, behind that.
Where the foundation is.
George,
Sale
George
house.
Smith's old property?
Yeah, but behind it.
They
like-
just split that up into smaller chunks.
Yeah,
Did
they-
they?
Yeah, they're
just-
trying to get, that would have been a really great deal
They went
last
through
year.
site plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went through site plan.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so I think we should put up for discussion the, starting a fields committee.
Yeah,
And I'm
absolutely.
definitely for it. Any thoughts and discussions on how we wanna approach that?
So it's more of an ad hoc committee, I guess, at this point, so it's not a formal committee, but you're sort of giving them a charge, whether it's going to look at land or having conversations or, you know, seeing folks.
Well, I think we have the players at the table,
Yeah.
you know, and then, you know, if there's some townspeople that we wanna pull in or you like to use for, you know, assets, I think that that's important.
I think it'd be important to give them a specific charge. So is it, do we want them to find land? Do we want them to, having conversations with either conservation people? You know, what would we like to charge them with?
You know, one thing on the last one was to make a recommendation to the school as well. You know, to examine the space
So I
and make
bring
a
it back to you,
recommendation,
right.
you know, make recommendations or a variety of recommendations. So it could be a recommendation of what we do with just this existing space, or it could be something along the lines, we'd like you to examine alternative possible spaces as well, and then bring a recommendation to you.
I know that Brad would like the space right now, so that he can make some
Tomorrow.
plans.
Right.
So,
Well, having a town committee coming up with, you know, not only a consensus on the need, because we have a consensus on the need in the ed specs right now, but that's from the perspective of the SAU, right, of the district. And melding that with a cohesive need for the town. And also the second half of that is looking for opportunities to fulfill that need outside of the immediate campus, to maximize opportunities for satisfying educational programs on campus with built environment, right? And looking for those resources not only with town assets, but also other assets that might be available to the town that they don't own presently.
Right.
So there's finalizing the need and then fulfilling the need and authorizing them to talk outside of, you know, town players to look at opportunities. So it's sort of a two-parter, and one of those parts has its own two parts.
It was just an outside of the box thought, knowing the limitations we have with available land in Sunapee based on our rocky terrain. Have you had any conversations with Newport? Because one thought is where Dorwellen used to be. It's flat, a lot of space, so if Newport has needs, we have needs, go in it with two different communities.
And where's that location?
Not exactly sure where that piece is.
It's between
Got it.
Sunapee and Newport, is probably about 4 miles from here.
yeah.
Before you get to Stern River on the left, there used to be a
Okay.
little hill there.
You can't touch the environmental issues there.
So,
So I'd say subcommittee thoughts. I mean, we're in a committee meeting, let's brainstorm a little bit and see how people feel. So I'm thinking we have a smaller group that's focused just on the fields with what this group, the rest of this group has in front of us. Smaller group focused on the fields, meet with these two folks and go visit each of the sites reasonably to look at them, look at the prior plans, all that work that was done over 8 or 10 years, whatever that was done before. Review all of that with what they are able to see. Give the subcommittee a recommendation so we can talk about it in the subcommittee and potentially bring something to the full board. So that's not, I'm not saying that's it. I'm just to get the
Right.
conversation started. I think it'd be very interesting if people were just focused on that and actually went and looked at a few of these. Your description of it might look very different than somebody who puts in foundations versus somebody else. So if you got a small group together, go visit, look at the documents, look at the town map, look at the topography, go check out a few of these areas. Then for you, it could be opening a discussion with,
Newport, Mount Royal.
Newport and Mount Royal. That's separate, which you could do as, you know, superintendent, but I think that's an encouraging opportunity for three communities to potentially team up. It opens a can of worms, but it also opens up another path of potential. But if we did have some people who wanted to lean in and say, leveraging what was done before, getting your insight, going to the sites and saying, this is what I think we should do and why, I think would be helpful to this group. Doesn't mean that you're deciding it, it doesn't mean that that's what the voters are gonna see, but it gives community engagement to this subcommittee in a meaningful way, because there is no easy answer on any angle of any part of this project. So if we get some fresh eyes, looking at the maps, getting your ideas cataloged, I think that could be beneficial for us as a committee and the broader community for discussion.
And are the two big stakeholders is the rec department and the high school? Those are the two you want to focus on?
Those are the two main focuses.
School, but I said,
Right.
school
Yeah.
department and rec, okay.
Not everybody,
So,
yeah.
the way that I look at it is, I'm looking at Mr. Frederick over there and Mr. Cooney,
Yeah.
Mr. Icapino, as you're the ones that know our needs the best. I'd like you guys to lead us in that charge. I'd really like you two, if you'd be willing, to look at some property, because, and Scott, with your knowledge on grades and sizes, if you'd be willing to help out with that, that would be fantastic for us.
Right, excellent. I only just to add a resource to that, we at Banwell did a very preliminary look at topography maps of the area
Yep.
and the assessor's list to see what you guys owned. And we did a quickie colorized map of properties that were over 5 acres in town, and we could certainly send that to you.
Sure, that'd
We
be
just did an
fantastic.
overlay with the assessor's map.
That'd be great to have from
Yeah.
my perspective, just because
It lends a
it
short
eliminates,
list.
it eliminates a lot.
Yeah,
Lot
because
of-
there's a lot of properties and some of them are just not feasible, so, I think I've sent that along before, but I'll resend it.
Okay.
Give you a good starting plan.
So we're putting you on the spot in the meeting about taking on another project at the start of the school year.
Us?
Are you guys?
We're all in.
Are you guys in to be the subcommittee? Not being respectful at all and giving you time to think about it?
We're in.
Okay,
We're all
you're
in.
in?
Laker pride.
You're willing to lean in on this?
Yep.
You guys are okay with that?
Yep, whatever you need.
So,
Fantastic.
so the charge is, that wasn't, I think I did see that topography, your initial pass. So start with Banwell topography and then come back to Banwell topography. You take it, take the old documents, huddle amongst yourselves. It's great you filled in the history. We want you to come back with a recommendation, a first choice, second choice, third choice, and why, so that we can have it back to the meeting. Does that seem like a reasonable, clear assignment?
What's the timeline?
We're focusing on the in-town because
Monday.
they focused on in-town. We're not doing anything in Newport.
I think we gotta clarify in town first.
Right.
Well, that's what
Let's
I'm
exhaust that
saying.
first.
Russ can talk to the other,
Right, I can talk to
Mount
those.
Royal and Newport, that's a separate conversation, so you bring it back, he brings it back, whatever progress is made, we're hoping you're coming back and saying, this is what we think we should do and why, and go forward from there.
So this is what I'd like to see, if you guys are all in with it, is on our next CIP meeting, which is September 25th, if you guys could come back with some ideas of what we need for usage and some ideas of some space, so that we can talk about it at that point, and hopefully we'll have some more information for Brad and see if we can't figure something out. But that's what I'd like to see. And then Russ, if you could tell us about what your conversations were with Newport and Mount Royal.
And I think you should also put in their charge that they take into consideration, the word conservation land has been tossed around. And some of these, even though they're available, can't be touched. So as you look at those, you'll be able to exclude those that.
Right.
That
I mean,
it may be an ideal
exactly.
spot, but if it's got a, if
got
it's
an easement
forever
against
been deeded to conservation, you can't put anything on it, or you can, or what can you and can't you?
So one of the other questions that I've more in line for Russ is, if you're gonna look at Newport, that would involve a purchase or an acquisition with somebody else. Why not look at larger tracts of land in the town that maybe are privately owned that you may have those discussions?
Sure. That'd be excellent. Who would do that?
We could start that conversation.
Well, the three of us can huddle
Yeah.
on that part of it.
Right.
and let them go with the Danwell map.
Do you
and
have
then
some of that teased out?
crossing out things that aren't
I
realistic.
don't have private homeowner land teased out.
It's fairly accessible on the town's GIS system to.
Right.
Yeah, well, the parcels are certainly clear enough,
Yeah.
but
Right.
we didn't venture down the road of looking at privately owned land by other people as potential sites.
There's a big chunk, the Bailey zone, it looks like, behind their house.
Up in there, yeah.
How, do you know what the topography looks like on that?
Right
There
near
will-
the,
I-
where the SAU is.
in lieu of talking about them now, I think if we look on the town's GIS map and if you identify those, it'll
Yeah.
give you a good starting point.
Okay, good enough. Anybody, any more questions about?
Do you feel your charge is clear? For the
Mr. Federer,
25th?
go to town, September 25th, needs and usage. We got you.
Usage and availability.
Yep.
Cool,
And
thank you.
I'd also really like to know have some usage ideas for the track team, you know, as well. Because they just seem to be the ones that, I know that everybody else is left out with, we can't use these fields, but it seems like they're really left out all the time.
Scott, the first thing that I heard you say when you sat down was you've been here for 15 years and 12 of them you've been looking at field use.
Yes.
Is there anything that the town has put in writing or identified as we need more fields, as we have done as a school department? So has that been really spoken, or is that just sort of, hey, the other rec department, go figure it out, go get field space?
A lot of it's just been spoken among rec committee meetings. We haven't really gone further than that to the selectmen or planning board. You know, when I've met with master plan, it's been included in there.
Okay, so there's pieces of it in the master plan.
Yep.
All right.
I'm assuming that your numbers at rec must have grown with the amount of numbers that have grown at the high school.
Yeah, it's been pretty consistent over the years, you know, about that 100 mark,
Mhm.
sometimes a little bit higher,
Yeah.
but not really any lower.
Right.
It really depends sometimes on the size of the class.
Mhm.
And those are Sunapee numbers. We don't take a lot of non-residents, so those are pure numbers.
It's clear the co-curricular involvement is alive and well in town, right? So we're growing clubs, the bike club, the PE club, the hiking club, we got clubs coming, and our athletics are, you know, fully participated in. It's a value to the community, I would say.
I heard the B club is taking over the upper field.
The
No one's
Bees
gonna mess with
overtook the
bees.
lower field.
We good here?
I think we're good with that.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you all
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so we switched things up a little bit.
Timeline.
Yeah, let's review the timeline of what we got coming up.
You mind if I introduce the FAQ?
No, that's fine.
So just, we put together dates from today's date to January on
Yeah.
CIP meetings, forums, and other events that will include this committee. I just wanted to make sure that everything was correct there for everyone to take a look at on the committee, so we could get it posted on our website up and out tomorrow. So if folks are okay with it, we'll make sure that gets updated, because we are on our last date on our current timeline.
Correct.
Good thing.
Great to see this go up tomorrow.
New timeline.
People are asking.
People good?
Yeah, that's what
Yes.
we discussed.
All good.
Yeah,
Ah.
that looks right.
All right, so this will go up on the.
We'll
this
put it
will
right
go
on our
the site.
website.
Yep.
And the key thing to emphasize is I'll mention it again later at the school board meeting, September 12th Community Forum. On September 12th and October 30th, those are the two forums. Love to see the gym overflowing with interested voters.
All right, next up on the agenda, everybody's good with the timeline, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's great.
We're gonna do a website review.
So just real quick, because I know when we used this in the end of June, we were sort of in transition. This has been up and running now since sometime mid-August. This is our homepage. From our homepage, you'll see right on the top banner is our capital improvements page. And then there is a menu from there. If you just click on the capital improvements page, it will bring you to that page. On that page, one of the first things there, if there are questions, comments, please call me, email me, get a hold of me. I'll be happy to do my best to get you those responses. But this will be the place that all information is stored and placed. We have a little bit of our charge here. We talked about some of the needs, and again, some of the stuff has been up here for a while. I won't go through too much of it, but this is our old timeline. And as I mentioned, we are on our last date, so that our new timeline will be there. Our agendas are there, our videos of the meetings, as we're taking a video tonight, our enrollment projection and numbers and things from NESDEC, they are all there. Our minutes are there. Under our minutes, we're trying to put all things that are sort of crucial in this process as far as paperwork. And I say that because we put the 2 ed specs, and here is one of the ed specs. Takes a minute to pull up, but they are all there for you to go ahead and take a look at the leisure and the comfort of your home. So again, we thank John for his hard work. This will be the spot. So if we're talking about looking for information on the CIP, on this project, on whatever projects gets proposed, this is the place to go.
It's where everything lives.
Everything lives. If you have questions, concerns, please give me a call. Email address, link it right there. It'll click on it, it'll send it right to me.
You know, a question. I was going through the website the other day. Are we linking the sports to the website yet?
Tom's probably gone. I don't know the answer to that question. I think we have, I think we're trying to, but one of the things I know we're trying to do is not make it so Tom has to put things in 3 different places.
Right. I didn't know if we were just gonna put a link on.
Yeah, I know John's been working on that. I think they have.
Want me to take that?
You're here? What am I hearing you're there?
It's good. I got to leave momentarily. So through the state arbiter system, we have to use a scheduling system that all the schools are using for scheduling athletics.
Right.
So from that, we get a website. If you have sunathletics.org, that site allows you to have notifications, SMS, email, smoke signals, however you want. You know, your mom can call you, notifications of practices, games, changes in schedules. To recreate all of that on our website would have been probably adding 2 more people to the budget and just beyond really what we need to be doing here. So we have, like right on the homepage of the high school, there's a link, there's a button there that says athletics, boom, it takes you to that web page. From the drop-down menus, co-curricular athletics, it takes you into schedules for all of the.
So the link's already up?
Yeah, so the links are in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And those are some things we looked at with like traffic, like athletics is more co-curricular traffic than drama does. So, you know, we've got that at a higher level than drama.
You going to the school board meeting?
No, I'm not, I've got soccer.
So I can do that presentation then?
No.
And this is the last piece I think is really, really important. How to help. And we talk about this investment in this community, investing in this investment right now looks like spreading the word about the webpage, attending meetings, and looking at the district calendars for the meeting dates and like we said, on our timeline, but just getting the facts and making sure you know the facts and knowing the facts are here.
Thanks, Rob.
Sure. Still in my comfortable chair.
All right, next up, we got the review and approve the construction manager estimating services, RFQ.
Right.
Request for
So
quote.
take them, when you take them, you're taking top 3 pages and they are.
Want me to give a little 2-minute talk as to why we're
That'd
doing
be
this?
great, Gordon.
I'll stand up so I can penetrate out there a little better. So the audience would be asking, what is this that's being asked for to be approved tonight? And one of the positions that we need to get filled to go toward a successful bond vote would be a construction manager's estimating services. So what that would entail is, right now you have Banwell that's coming up with some drawings over the next couple of months of various varieties of the building, and we need to put an intelligent figure to that. If you look back at what causes a bond vote to fail is when you don't have an intelligent figure that you can put down. One that if it passes, you can actually sell and build a building for. So we'll use, for example, that a person could stand up here and say, we're going to be estimating services, and then, you know, we think that the bond vote on this building is going to be $20 million. Well, it ends up coming in at $23 million when you've approved 20. Well, the whole thing is sort of sunk before it starts. So one of the ways you do that is by hiring a person who does this every day, who is willing to stand behind the figures. So we have created here what we're calling construction manager estimating services that they're being asked to review tonight. And what that would be a company that might eventually be the construction manager of the project, but might not be the construction manager of the project. But of that caliber, we'll bid this and say, this is what the building can be built for. We'll come back to you during these various iterations, and it'll have a very detailed budget. So for example, tonight's a good example. We're talking about the playing fields. Well, the playing fields are liable to be a variety of dollar amounts all over the place. That could be something that you could say, okay, the playing fields, that's a really big deal to us, and it's going to be $2.5 or $3 million. You're able to know that that's what you're spending on a playing field. You're going to know what you're spending on science rooms. You're going to know what you're spending on other parts of your budget. It'll all be broken down for you. Now, what we've done for your advantage here as a community is we think we've devised a construction manager estimating services quote bid that will go out that will allow you to have this price come in very cheap. This work typically can cost, don't think, but it can cost $50,000, $60,000. Well, we're dancing around and talking to various companies to get their inputs. What do you feel about doing this on something of more like a $10,000 or a $15,000 range? So in other words, basically a lost leader. Dangle it in front of everybody in the area and say, come on and be our partner on this, but we don't want to pay your usual top dollar. So we're hoping that these will come in and that will save you a lot of money on the front end of this. On the other end, if the project goes to bond and is successful, this does not give an advantage to the company that did this work. We want it to be fair when we go out next year and bid construction manager only services for the people that actually come in and build it. And this makes it so that there is no extra advantage to them. We're paying them for their services. They're doing it as a loss leader with the idea to get their foot in the door. If next year they were, for example, to not get the job, we might talk about some exit clause in which they get paid a compensation of, let's say, $10,000 or $15,000 for the extra effort that they did. If the bond bill doesn't happen, they get paid nothing. We're kicking those ideas around, but we want to let you know that this table is thinking to your advantage as to how to do this, and we're hoping that the dollar amount that you'd be committing to tonight, we are feeling is going to come into the $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 range. That neighborhood, not $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 range.
Good.
Is that fair?
Could you or Brad or both of you speak to help illustrate to the community the importance of the accurate pricing? You know, in prior years here, that became an issue. That became an issue last year without this understanding and the knowledge and the consulting that we're getting. Can you cite a little bit more and potentially, you know, examples or otherwise of why this step is so important for the voters?
I'll start and then Brad pick up with it, but again, it's to protect you folks as a community that when you vote at the ballot for this, there's nothing worse than having it come back in at a price that it can't be built for. You have one chance to go for this vote. You have to have faith in the group that's up here that's doing it. And the way you do that is by having an actual construction manager service do this. By them doing it every day, they know they can come in and eventually build this because they may be the company that's eventually bidding on it to do that. So that's one way to answer it. We'll let Brad give another cut and then we'll see what you miss. I'll chime in again.
Well, that was well put, Gordon. I think the advantage to having a construction management service do this is that they do it every day. They know what the prices are for steel, wood, etc., real time. And they're keeping records of that as they're doing their construction at the moment. Having an estimator, sort of a third-party estimator who's not seeing those numbers all the time is a disadvantage. So doing this through a construction management team is really the way to go, because the bond vote or the estimate number is the number. That's, if a bond vote's approved at an estimated number, that's what we're going to build it for. So there's no going back to the well afterward.
Right.
So we want to get this right. If we had somebody else doing it who comes in with some safety number that's too large, then that makes no sense. If it's too low, we can't build it. So it's really a
important to get the guy who's doing it right now, building these projects right now, so we get the number right the first time.
You said use examples. I used an example about, I guess it was 10 or 15 years ago down in Brattleboro, Vermont. They did not do this, and they had a $50 million school project. Well, then they went out and bid it in phases as they went along. And I sort of chuckle because it's my hometown, and knowing construction, you know exactly what happened if you know what you're looking for. The front of the building is this beautiful granite and brick, and the parking lots are paved. And then when you get to the back of the building, which was the last one to be done, we're down to regular siding and gravel parking lots. They clearly ran out of money in the way you have even cut. We want to know the whole budget before you do that, so that you're not getting into it and then saying, oh boy, what are we gonna do now? Okay, well, a simple thing, ceiling tiles are 2x2 ceiling tiles. These are pretty. 2x4s would do the same thing. They cost a lot less. So if you begin running out of money, you start changing your ceiling tiles. You'll never see it from an airplane, but your building will see it over the next 20 years. These are better ceiling tiles than 2x4s. Carpet, the same thing. There's different percentages, ounces of carpet. We could change this carpet and you'd never know it. That's what we don't want to have happen for you. So we think it's a good investment.
It's helpful.
These firms also provide estimating is considered pre-construction services. So what you buy with a construction manager for this type of service is also advice on maybe more advantageous ways to build the building than we've even thought of. So, I mean, we've got a great team here, but having that other layer of expertise. Yeah, value engineering, they're gonna come up with other materials that they're gonna suggest that maybe the market's shifted. So there was a lot of thinking. Here's an example. 3 years ago, it was said that metal panels were cheaper than masonry. Okay, so we were designing a lot of metal panel wall systems. Maybe you do a masonry wainscot, and then you go up with metal panels. Well, the whole market has shifted over now, and it's saying that it's about even. So, you know, we thought we were doing a great savings on the design. I said, no, pretty much you could build a whole wall out of CMU or brick, and you're in the same ballpark.
Right.
So that's the sort of real-time information that we don't always get as the engineering and designing team on the front end. Phasing is really important. Construction manager can step in and say, well, look, if we phase it this way or that way, we can maximize the investment. That's happened quite a bit. We did that in Newmarket, Wyndham, and a little bit in Stevens, but not quite so much.
And then just one more quick example. Hinsdale, New Hampshire is a good example of an architect who had a certain design for the gym. They knew what the criteria was that the gym needed to be. The estimating services was able to say, you know, that gym is a perfect candidate to be a pre-engineered building. Those pre-engineered buildings, you've heard of, they're very inexpensive. They're considerably inexpensive to build compared to going up with steel and brick on the outside. And again, they look wonderful. So that was a way in which in Hinsdale, we were able to cut $400,000 out of $1 million project. It was $1 million the other way. It became $600,000 by just the suggestion of the estimator of doing it with a pre-engineered building. And then you go back and you talk to the architect, and they put a couple of little facades on the front that make that stale building look a little better, but it didn't cost you $400,000.
That's exactly how what we did at New Hampton School with the rink. So they had a hockey rink there, pre-engineered building with a beautiful lobby up front. But look at the lobby, you know, look at the pre-engineered building. Yeah, it looks great.
So that's what we're up to.
Thanks, I think that's informative.
Yes.
The examples, anytime you guys are speaking with examples, it's really helpful to everybody in the audience.
We just want to go over the dates a little bit to make sure we're all comfortable with the dates. Gordon, I don't know if you could talk about if, you know, August 23rd for it to be issued, and then the due date of August 30th, that we're comfortable with.
That could be a question that you would have, and I expected that. We're marching toward to get it approved at a select board, at a school board meeting. That is the 3rd or 4th. So we sort of did